Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our LinkedIn Live session, Talk Data to Me, where we talk about all things data security. I'm David Kish, your host for today, and I'm here with special guest Frank Johnson, VP of Federal at Lookout. So our topic today is TikTok. Should it be trusted? And just to set the stage, TikTok, despite having 1.6 billion users worldwide, 130 million active American users, it's been in the spotlight over the recent months over its questionable data collection, handling and privacy practices. A lot of security conscious nations and organizations worldwide waste little time deciding to ban the app on government-owned devices. So we know that federal ban's nothing new. There was a congressional hearing with TikTok CEO in March, and 30 states in the U.S. so far. Many countries outside of the U.S. have already taken action against TikTok and its parent company, ByteDance. So Frank, welcome to the show. My question for you is, what risk factor is driving agencies to ban TikTok on government devices, and why are they pushing it even further towards nationwide bans?
So, David, let's first talk about the current work environment. Pre-COVID, everybody was in the office, safely behind firewalls, lots of corporate and agency supplied cybersecurity, accessing critical information from government supplied, government managed devices. And then during COVID, everybody ran home, public Wi-Fi, home Wi-Fi, personally owned devices, coming back into the enterprise, accessing very critical information. And now as people make their way back to work, now we've got the best of both worlds, or the worst of both worlds, in and out of the environment, back to public Wi-Fi, home Wi-Fi, back inside the corporate firewall, BYOD, connected devices, government owned, a mishmash of everything. And it's very hard for IT shops to keep up. In fact, Gartner will go as far today as saying about 50% of workers use personal devices at work for at least part of the time. I mean, so that's the current work environment. Now let's talk about what's at the heart of TikTok. Is privacy. TikTok collects an inordinate amount of personal information. 150 million Americans use the TikTok application, at least for now. And TikTok, as we all know, is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese-owned company. Mm-hmm. And by law, Chinese-owned companies have got to allow access to their data and information when the Chinese government requests it. That information is not protected by U.S. privacy laws. They're under the control of Chinese government privacy laws. And on that, so that's at the root of the issue, David. So, the federal government's not waiting. They're very troubled and alarmed by this. So they've taken steps to mandate with OMB 2313 about a month or so ago that demands that all TikTok be removed from all government supplied devices. That's just the start. 30 days later, all major contractors, I'll say primes. 30 days after that, all subs. And I wouldn't be surprised if this policy and regulation starts to flow down to, critical sectors that are looked after by the regulatory agencies and U.S. Fed Gov, or the critical infrastructure sectors that CISA works with to protect our nation's critical infrastructure. Now I know that we all know that TikTok has made repeated appeals around things like Project Texas, to keep information generated in that country, in that home country. But even with those promises, recent reports of the Chinese government getting access to certain information within TikTok to track journalists, it's very public and everybody's pretty much aware of it. So even with those assurances, the U.S. federal government's not waiting and they're taking action. And the first part of that action is OMB 2313.
Yeah, it's interesting. And even after the congressional hearing, the pledges from TikTok's CEO, we still see things popping up in the news about journalists being tracked on a personal level by TikTok, by employees in China. And there's been new announcements too from ByteDance, announcing apps like Lemonade that essentially are the same thing, just putting a fresh label around the same issue. Ultimately, that data is still going back to the parent nation company. But brings me to another point though. TikTok's name, has solely been on the label of government bans, and even other proposed laws for a nationwide ban. Is it just one app that it's the main issue though, or is restricting one app enough for agencies and organizations alike to effectively, at a whole, eliminate mobile app risk?
David, I'm so glad that you brought this up. We constantly remind everyone that TikTok is just the tip of the iceberg. We've identified in our research labs over 9 million apps that have the ability to send telemetry data back to China. 9 million. And again, like we talked about a moment ago, by definition, by law, the Chinese government has access to that data and information. And by the way, those are just 9 million mobile apps, not counting the millions of connected devices, infrastructures, cloud infrastructures, databases, equipment, other non-mobile applications. The sheer number of them that have the ability to send data back to China is absolutely alarming. And again, Chinese law dictates that the government gets access to that data and information. Now let's talk about a very recent one, where we discovered a 0-day vulnerability in this application that was very popular called Pinduoduo.
Right.
And what we discovered was Pinduoduo was stealing people's personal information and their credentials, loading malicious applications. We discovered that this was happening across millions of phones where Pinduoduo was installed. That's just a reminder. That's just one of 9 million applications we've identified that have the ability to connect, transmit, send data back to China.
Right. So while TikTok is, risky, we actually have proof that there's an app like Pinduoduo that's actually performing malicious activity. I remember, immediately following that Pinduoduo incident, it was discovered by our threat team that Temu, another popular PDD holdings app, was pushing an unauthorized update to quickly remove, some of its malicious code, from the app stores, which is, a huge no-no in compliance. So, really big security concerns over very, very wildly popular apps that have millions of users, across the globe. So, with that said, how can government agencies make sure they're protected? And can you ban an app? Let's just say you have traditional MDM. Can you just simply ban that app and call it a day? Or are there additional steps that should be taken?
The answer is absolutely no. No, we constantly remind people who read OMB 2313, which quite literally says, just get TikTok off of all government supplied phones. By the way, 31 states and counting have followed suit, many NATO nations. And again, I'm sure it's just a matter of time before this flows down to almost everyone, especially those in critical infrastructure. All the MDM does is blocks the app from the user. The app could still be running in the background. It's not protecting all of the other malicious activity happening on the phone. So I was a former CIO. So my question is, with 60 to 70% of the world's internet traffic running through this device, why should this be treated any differently than your PC? So you need an MDM, David, and some mobile endpoint security so that you can detect other malicious activity, a user clicking on the wrong email, phishing attack. Today, most cyber attacks start here. This is the information access device of choice. It needs to be protected just like the PCs, the laptops, and anything else that's accessing critical information. Oh, by the way, and that too needs to extend not just to the corporate supplied devices or the government supplied devices. It needs to extend to any personal device that's being used by a user to access any confidential or critical information.
Exactly. Yeah. With the remote workforce today, and we don't see that slowing down anytime soon, it's going to continue to be, a risk that needs to be addressed by all organizations and government agencies alike. Frank, any other closing statements you want to share, before we wrap up?
No, David, just what we talked about already. Hybrid's here to stay. All devices accessing critical information need to be protected. There is an inordinate amount of applications, infrastructures, devices that have the ability to connect and send data back to China. Every government agency, every business that operates in the United States of America needs to be incredibly cognizant of that threat and make it part of their cybersecurity framework and protection and defenses. Absolutely, including mobile phones.
Couldn't agree more. And it looks like we got a question in the comments. Can we go to recording? Yes, this is being recorded, so it will be available for replay on our LinkedIn. And That just about does it for the show today, but I do want to thank Frank for joining us on this episode of Talk Data to Me. And if anyone wants to learn more, we do have a link available in this post. So, read up more about Lookout. And I want to just thank everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, everyone.